In the previous video, we saw how group by can trick you into a false sense of, well, if I have groupings, then I can obviously calculate a result out of it. And grouping, although a very powerful tool, still has limitations. There are still questions we can't answer, and that was the purpose of that video. The purpose of this video, however, is to ask you a question. What if we want to combine the results of multiple groupings? Now, you can kind of feel that we're picking up the pace here. We're going faster and faster, and we're learning more complex things as we go along. And the reason for this is to master SQL, hard questions need to be solved. And to answer hard questions, we need to accelerate the pace. So with the previous video, we were showing you, okay, we know how groupings work, and we know how we can get answers out of groupings, but groupings have limitations. And in this video, what we want to show you is, hey, if we have groupings, how can we combine multiple answers from different groups? Now, before we dive deeply into it, there's this thing that I want to show you, this thing that we haven't seen yet, combining multiple results from multiple selects. Now, I hear you thinking, Mo, what are you talking about? We can only run one select statement at a time. And yes, that is true. We have done that up until now. And when you run one select statement, you'll get one subset of answers. But the thing about SQL is we're working with data. We're getting data sets back. And when we get data sets back, we can combine those data sets. We can combine the results of multiple selects into an output. Now, it really depends on what you're trying to answer, if it may or may not be valuable to you, because over here, you can see union. And what union does is if we look at the query down here, we're selecting column 1 and we're doing sum of column 2 from a table and we're grouping by column 1. Very simple group statement where it really becomes obvious that what we're trying to do is get a result here out of a grouping, for instance, like we did with the departments. Now, if we did a union and we did select sum of column 2 from the table, we'll get the total sum of all the records, right? Because the aggregate function will get us the total amount of column 2, not by the grouping. Now, what this union is going to do is it's going to take the result from this, and it's going to take the result from this, and it's going to merge them so that you can see this result inside of the same data set. Union is one of those powerful things where if you want to run multiple queries and combine the results into one table, it can help you do that. And on top of that, there is a separate keyword called union all. Now, what's the difference, I hear you ask? What's the difference between union and union all? Well, the main difference is that union all does not remove duplicate records. Remember when we said that SQL and tables cannot contain duplicate records, and that the primary key is there to warrant that we have unique outputs? Well, union is going to remove duplicate records. It's going to make sure that the data set we get back does not have duplicates. But sometimes you may come into a case where you do want those duplicates. So union all can be used so that you don't remove those duplicates. It's one of those cases where there's different ways of working with data and combining data, and the push and pull of whether or not you should use it depends on the question you're trying to answer. Now let's look at a case where we would use union. So over here, what we can see is that I have a query. And this query is selecting null as prod ID, comma, sum of order lines quantity. So we're going into order lines. We're in our store database and we're going into all of the different orders that have happened. So we're selecting the total quantity of things we've sold, which we can see here is 120,719. So we know we've sold a total quantity of products that equates to that amount. And then we do a union. So we're combining data sets. And then we say select prod ID, as prod ID, and you want to use the as because if you combine unions, if you don't use the as, it will not give the record, the column a name, and the order by will break. So you can see here, it won't give the column a name. So it's important to use the as to give the column a name. Now we can see here we're doing a grouping by product ID, and we're seeing the sum of the quantity we sold by that product ID. and then we're ordering it descending. So what we can see here is that when we run this, what we are doing is for product ID 1000, we sold 9. And if we go all the way down, we can see that for product 1, we sold 9 items and so forth and so forward. And we can see the total amount per product that we sold. And we can even go ahead and filter on that if we need to. But the important part here is that we have a combination. We've combined records. And if we did union all, of course, it would not remove the duplicates. Now, in this case, we do not have duplicates, but there are cases in which you could have duplicates, especially if I were to do something similar to here, but with a different calculation. Now, the whole point of this is to talk about, what if I want to do this in one query? What if I want to show the results of multiple groupings in one query? Well, that's a good question. And so if we were to look at that, we have our group by statement. And over here, we were saying, hey, I want to see the grouping of product IDs. I want to see the sum, the total quantity of all of the product IDs I've sold. And here I'm saying per product ID, I want to see the sum of the quantity that I've sold. Now, if we wanted to combine those into one query, SQL gives us a cool feature called grouping sets. And what grouping sets allow you to do is it allows you to combine the outputs of multiple groupings, kind of like the union would do. So if we were to do a grouping set of nothing, and then a grouping set of prod ID, well, what would we get? So if we execute that, we can immediately see we're getting the same exact result. So this is just another way of writing this union syntax. And we get the same exact output, because if I remove the order by, then you can still see that the union is happening. So what's important to note here is that grouping sets work the exact same way as a union would. And it's a powerful tool when you want to combine the output of multiple things. Here I can see the total sum of the quantities I've sold, and here I can see them by product ID. And I can go further and I can do it on different things. I could do it based on the order line ID. I could add that as a third grouping. And in that case, we can see that we are indeed grouping 3 times. And certain values are null. Interesting. So if we went ahead here and we did order by prod ID, we could clearly see what is happening here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so let's add the order line ID. And let's execute it again. So over here we can see that certain order line IDs have a sum. So we're combining the data sets. And over here you can see that this is the total amount of quantity we've sold. So if we order it by prod ID and then order line ID, then we can see that our total sum is all the way down. Now, if we did this descending and we did this one descending, it would end up at the top. And there we go. This is the total sum we've sold. This is the sum per order line ID. And this is the sum per product. And what's useful about this is we can clearly see different groupings and different outputs in a very easy way. We're grouping and creating a sum based on different grouping criteria. And that makes it easy to put it all in one query rather than have to write a union of multiple queries, which is super useful. And that is what grouping sets are for. Grouping sets is a subclause of group by that allows you to define multiple groupings. Let's remember that. And now let's do some exercises on it.